Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Inside Today's Boardrooms, where we talk about everything you need to know to stay on top of board governance today, all in 10 minutes. I'm joined today by Tina Sharkey, and this is a rare twofer for us, but we had so much to talk with Tina about the last time she was here that we brought her back. Tina, to remind you, is an entrepreneur, an advisor, a lecturer at USC. She's been a pioneer in web, in e-commerce, in social, and in so many other things in her roles as CEO of Brandless and iVillage, as well as a speaker and consultant to Fortune 500 brands in things like MarTech and innovation. So, Tina, welcome back to the show. We had so much fun with you last time that we brought you back.
Yes, I couldn't wait to get here.
So you teased up something in the last episode, and I thought we just had to follow up on it. And that was a discussion about brand. As you know, so much has evolved with branding that I thought it might be a good place to go a little bit deeper with you and talk about how brands have evolved and what does it mean today to have a premier brand?
So I think brands are not something that you can claim that you have. Brands get built over time, and brands get built in the modern sort of lingua franca of brands. It's alongside the people you exist to serve. And so if you're truly building something alongside the people you exist to serve, that means you're building a listening lab. That means that insights are the new form of media. That means you're building them not only alongside that community, but that community in the worlds of enterprise can be renamed as stakeholders. And thinking about enterprise brand love, what does it mean to have brand love at the very top enterprise level? Well, if you have brand love, then your community will defend you when you trip, because we all trip, things happen, as opposed to defriend you and cancel you in a cancel culture today. Two, they're willing to look at adjacency and adjacency products and do trial if they believe in you, because they believe not only in your products, your service, but also in your brand. They might be willing to take more price because brands can sometimes charge a premium for their price. And they often will inform you on where you want to go, what products they're looking for next, what features that they love, what are the heroes in your assortment in your collection. And most importantly, they'll become your barker channels. They'll be the people who tell a friend, because as I like to say, a brand is not what you say about yourself. A brand is what a friend tells a friend. And so how do you architect that narrative? Well, you can't put words in people's mouth. You have to walk that authentic walk, and you have to be in communication with the people you exist to serve. And that means your shareholders. That means your other stakeholders, because in the world of truth decay and trust decline in governments and institutions, people are looking to corporate leaders to give them a point of view, not just about their products and their services, but where they stand on societal issues. And so it's a very complicated world being a corporate leader today, because brands need to take a stand, and brands need to have a point of view about where things are going in their state, where things are going with legislature, what do they want to say about things, and how are they going to support their employees in doing so. And therefore, not only their employees, but their consumers who are following all of this narrative. What's their ESG point of view? Where are they manufacturing? These are all things that inform a brand narrative, because loyalty is no longer something that you can buy. There's what we like to call, or I like to call, the loyalty love loop, which means you have an infinity relationship, not just on the purchase, but in many ways that relationship begins after the sale. Direct to consumer, it's not a channel, it's a relationship. So what is that dialogue? Because it's a three-way dialogue. It's one to many, it's many to one, and then it's many to many. And being able to think about how that dialogue and those conversations inform the DNA of your modern brand is critical for shareholders, stakeholders, and corporate leaders.
That just brings up so much stuff. You know, when your brand is strong, your customers are your advocates. They're some of your marketing. They're some of your innovation and your suggestions. They're even some of your customer support. How do you think about if you were to advise a board and say, you know, here's what you need to know To be able to understand where your strengths and weaknesses are as it relates to brand, how your company is showing up, what is its brand promise, and expanding or enhancing on that brand promise. How do you think about those questions that boards should be asking of their marketing team and of their executive teams?
Well, I think once again, you and I have talked before about scorecards. So brands need scorecards as well. And so, first and foremost, I would talk about and think about truth, trust, and transparency. Like, are we walking that walk? Do we have purpose anchored at our core? And a purpose does not need to mean that you have a 501c3, although that's fine as well, with institutes like you have at Diligent. But it also means that your culture is intact, the way you're managing your people is intact, and you're transparent about all of the things that you need to be transparent about. Many of those cases are the way you're managing your factories and what are your third party manufacturing, how are they managing that, in what countries, and how are they planning that. Look what just happened when Ukraine and Russia went to war and how many people had to pull out of those regions. But then I remember I was talking to a Fortune 500 CEO, and he said, look, after this call, I'm getting on a call with our employees who have families in the Ukraine, and they want to know where we stand on this. And so these were the employees that were holding the CEO to task, not just about what their plans were in Russia and were they going to pull out, but how are they supporting their families in the Ukraine. So all of a sudden, these geopolitical issues become a critical part of that conversation. Secondarily, you have to think about what is your purpose and how are you articulating that to all of your stakeholders. Then you have to think about, and you talked about this a little bit with customer service, co-creation. So are we co-creating our service and our customer service alongside of our customers? Are we using their feedback and their reviews to integrate that back into the product and into the experience? Are we using their creations? So when was the last time you drove and saw an Apple billboard that didn't say shot on an iPhone? So guess what? They're finding that. There's over 7 million tags on Instagram alone that hashtag shot on an iPhone. And so Apple's able to go into that creative community and pull creative into their global advertising. So co-creation comes in all sizes, shapes, and colors. It can be people asking for a new color in the assortment, a new ingredient profile, or getting rid of an ingredient profile. So having, the quality assurance happening with consumers. That's why I say brands have to be listening labs. Brands have to be insights engines, and they have to think about all their stakeholders and how they're thinking about that. And then finally, I think about the multi-sensory experience of a brand. Brands in real life, brands in the virtual world. And how are you managing that? And how are you cross collaborating with other brands? So we're seeing that all the time where, you never would see Gucci and North Face like partnering up, but North Face is borrowing Gucci's hip trend and luxury culture, and Gucci is borrowing North Face like high performance culture in their down and their hiking boots, and they're collaborating. Some of these collaborations are episodic, where it's just one drop in one collection, and some of them are ongoing. So it's thinking about who are you collaborating with, what audiences are you trying to meet, and then what are your strategies to do that, both in your local markets as well as in the global world at large.
Maybe one of the last one for boards out there, you mentioned a scorecard. How do we think about this super tangibly? You know that I come from software and we talk about CAC, so customer acquisition cost, and LTV, lifetime value of the customer. And if the LTV is greater than the CAC, then you just go. But how do you think about sorting those things out, that if you want to try to capture as you're looking at brand health and brand awareness, all of those things, how do you quantify that?
Yes. So I'm a big advocate in the boardroom for looking at NPS scores, net promoter scores, because that is actually gives you a sense of how are consumers feeling about us and can we move those scores? And so I like to set a target for net promoter scores. I also like to deploy culture surveys so that we actually have a target for how our employees are feeling about being here and then how we want to move those surveys. So I think net promoter scores are important. I think culture scores and having a benchmark and doing it regularly because you don't want to do it when things are convenient. You want to do it quarterly with a pulse to see how are people feeling, because retention of employees is critical, and then attracting new employees is critical. The cost of losing an employee because they've lost faith with your culture, if you can get ahead of that and start to hear those trends, you can address them early. And then finally, and again, coming from enterprise software, thinking about what is your market cap is one way of measuring it and where you rank, but thinking about where your brand and the most valuable brands in your sector and in the sectors more broadly, and where do you stack there? On any given day, Microsoft maybe have the largest market cap, but are they in the top 5 of most respected brands? Usually Apple beats them out on that. So thinking about all of those measures and how can you move them, because when you can move your net promoter scores, you're going to have more people talking about you in positive ways. When you can move your culture scores, you're going to attract better and more talented people, and you're going to retain the people you want. When you can move your beloved, valuable brand scores, you're going to be able to take enterprise love and monetize that through all of your channels. So all of these benchmarks and more are critical ways of looking at your brand.
Well, that is how you create that loyalty love loop. And you'll have to hire Tina if you want to go deeper, because we are going to wrap it there. Thank you, Tina, so much for joining us again today.
My pleasure. I'll be back anytime you need me.
Love it. And thank you to our audience for tuning in. We'll talk to you again next week with another installment of Inside Today's Boardrooms from Diligent Institute.